Today we're going to be talking about some queer designers who have inspired me. Let's get to this, shall we? Today I thought it'd be really fun to really look back in the past at younger me and see and really sort of dissect queer people in fashion that have inspired me. I only have a few that I really want to talk about because I really want to give them a fair amount of conversation, because these are people that when I was young and I learned about them and learned that they were gay, I was like, I too can be successful and gay in fashion, which isn't, unheard of. A huge majority of designers happen to be gay men. So I knew it's like, oh look, there's a career I can get into. There's plenty of me there. Let's go for it. Sort of how did that happen? I've been drawing ever since I was a little kid. I started off by drawing animals and cartoons and flowers. And then at some point in the crossover from middle school to high school, I started drawing people, specifically women. I was always fascinated by the female form, the curves, the shapes, the silhouettes. And I started learning about clothing at that age, specifically through my obsession through Lady Gaga, who is an extremely visually conceptive character. When I was very young, Lady Gaga taught me that fashion is such an integral part into a person's identity. And I fell in love with that concept. And through her and seeing the things that she wore and drawing the things that she wore, I fell in love over and over and over again with fashion. So, thanks Gaga, thanks Mother Monster, rawr. As I was growing up, I started realizing and acknowledging these queer designers that I especially loved because I saw a bit of myself in them. I was like, wow, I can be successful and gay. Hell yeah, let's do this. So from that really young age, I started filling up notebooks and sketchbooks and page after page after page of illustrations. Some that I still have to this day that I could look through if we ever get into a video like that. We could definitely do a blast from the past. But today I wanted to focus on some of the moments that I saw growing up in fashion that really excited me and wanting to pursue fashion. And they're all sort of intertwined and attached to designers, because I immediately, when I fall in love with one look, I start diving into the designer's history and their past and just learning as much as I can about them. And then the obsession begins. So without further ado, let's get started, shall we? I could not in any way start this without Alexander McQueen. Alexander McQueen, I think, is the designer that inspired me to become a designer. And it all started at the 2010 VMAs when Lady Gaga wore that iconic Alexander McQueen dress from his last collection before, the unspeakable happened. And it was that look that I just fell in love with and thought to myself, I want to make something like that one day. And through learning about that and then watching Plato's Atlantis, then watching The Savage Beauty, then watching, I believe it's the Autumn Winter 2009 show with the giant trash heap and these huge bubble gowns and the feathers and the huge comical red lips, I started falling in love more and more and more with this designer, Alexander McQueen, and started seeing more of myself in his work. I felt an attachment to his work. His love for suiting and tailoring, I understood. His love for the dramatics and the buzz of fashion and how polarizing and emotional it can be, I fell in love with. And I just time after time after time have been a loyal fan. And even now I'm still a huge fan of Alexander McQueen. I love what Sarah Burton is doing. But yes, it's not the same. Even his work at Givenchy, I enjoyed so much. The white dresses and the ram's horns. I very much fell in love with McQueen's work. And I think to this day, everything that I am as a designer, selling a fantasy and an emotion, and even putting dark emotions and the darkness to fashion, I think it's something that I've definitely grown to do because of him. He did a very unique thing with fashion where he sold this emotion, this darkness in his fashion that wasn't happening in a lot of his stuff. Even going back to some of his first collections like Dante's Inferno, or the runway where the woman is in the middle of a ring of fire, where she's like covered in red fringe. There was a darkness that was being presented on his runway and in his clothing that called me, that always sparked interest, there's very few Alexander McQueen runways that I have not seen. And I think every single one of them is so, so fascinating. And I will always be a fan of his work. I think what he does has inspired generations to come. And I'm just so lucky to have had that moment when I was growing up to look at his work and just fall in love with it. So thank you. Next! Just screaming next so casually. Up next is Thierry Mugler. And same thing, as a kid, I actually watched I think it was that George Michael Too Funky. I instantly was enamored with the clothing that were being worn. This was already after my obsession with fashion started to grow. And I remember seeing a lot of early Mugler looks. One specifically that I love is the Aphrodite look, where the dress is this huge sort of flounced shell with the pearls. And I remember falling in love with that look and just losing my mind. And even right now with more modern Mugler, I love what Casey Cadwallader is doing at Mugler. A lot of people think that what he's doing is, you know, completely a departure away from it, but it's not haute couture, it's ready to wear. So I would love to see Mugler get its haute couture flow back and see someone create some really interesting looks. Like we have the quote unquote like lobster dress that Sacha Bell recreated, the full sequin dresses, the black dress with the feather plumes in the back. I love the Aphrodite seashell look. I love a lot of the hats worn in the Mugler collections. And I've every single time I've seen someone at Mugler, even when Nicola Formichetti was there at Mugler, and even Casey Cadwallader now, I always loved the aesthetic of Mugler. It's another house that I would love to design something for or work with, because I just love the history. I love the aesthetic. I love the looks that are able to be referenced. I just think it's so, so, so fun. And even now with the more modern ready-to-wear Mugler by Casey Cadwallader, I think it's still really fun and fresh and interesting. Do I miss the couture? Yes, obviously. But I don't hate what's happening right now. And Mugler and Thierry Mugler has always been someone that inspired me. And, you know, with the unfortunate of his passing as well, I felt it, because that was an icon that I would have loved to have met and picked his brain a bit and just see how well I can fall into that creative mindset, especially talking about, I would love to just look through some of his most iconic looks on the runway and just talk about how he made them, the construction. And like the thing about Mugler is its suiting is so futuristic, but retro and classic, and it's so interesting and fun and unique and innovative. And it's always been a brand that I've looked at their past and have fallen in love with, and look at the present, and I'm still intrigued. Thierry Mugler's work will always be work that I love to reference and have an emotional attachment to. Next! And finally, we're gonna do John Galliano, especially John Galliano's work for Dior. The Dior 1998 Haute Couture is one of my favorite runways ever, specifically for the 1920s referenced looks. These high funnel necked coats with this huge tapered, almost cocoon style coat is a look that I fell in love with at a very young age. It's a silhouette that I feel hasn't been used in a very long time. I love it deep down to my core. It makes me so excited every time I look at those. I'm someone that loves the 1920s, and I actually reference the 1920s quite often in some of my work, because one of my favorite books is The Great Gatsby, and I just love a lot of the energy of the 1920s. This life's a party, life in excess, life in luxury. Women were liberating themselves. People were just exploring themselves and having fun. And I think America in the 1920s is such an amazing thing to reference. Another Dior Galliano runway that I am obsessed with is the Egypt runway. These intricate gowns with these giant headpieces are killer. The ones that I specifically love, that I think are my favorite looks, are the mummy bandaged looks. They're very couture, very runway, very fantasy, but still wearable in a weird sense. And I love the police are hearing me talk about this haute couture and they're obsessed with it. Those mummy bandage dresses excited me so much when I first saw them, and I just fell in love with them. They very much are like, this is like if Cleo from Monster High had a high-end couture runway inspired by her, and I think it's just really, really fun. I love a lot of Galliano's references, even some of the stuff that are more equestrian references, some of the stuff that are more pirate reference. I'm pretty sure there was that pirate runway. There's a lot of Galliano runways that I think about very, very fondly, and I can't help but not fall in love. Like even the My Fair Lady ones, it's such an influential designer that has created these images of fashion and artwork on the runway that are forever burned in my psyche, and I love it. In the modern age, there are definitely a lot of queer designers that I'm in love with. I could definitely talk about them at another time. You know, we have Peter Doe, Telfar Clemens, Luar. We have Christopher John Rogers. There's Casey Cadwallader. There's some really, really amazing queer designers in this day and age that I would love to talk about. But I think that's for another video. I really just wanted to talk about 3 designers that inspired me and my aesthetic and my love for fashion at a very young age. I was a 14-year-old boy when I first fell in love with fashion, and it was these 3 designers that spearheaded it. There was a few others, you know. Zac Posen was another designer that very much inspired me when I was growing up. Gianni Versace was another one that really inspired me. There's a lot of designers that inspired me, but I think my core aesthetic and what I love to do in fashion was birthed through these 3 designers. You know, the campiness, the emotion, the drama, the glamour. I think these designers really are the 3 cornerstones of my love for fashion. They're my zodiac big 3 in fashion. It's like I'm an Alexander McQueen sun, a Galliano moon, and a Mugler rising. Oh my god. I'm going feral because I'm so hungry. With that, I'm gonna go. It's been real. It's been fun. I hope you are happy, healthy, and you enjoy your day. Have a happy Pride Month. Stay safe, stay proud. Drink your water. And love fashion!